It won't be long before Netflix or somebody has a series about children going to college, getting kicked out or not going and lying about it. Their parents get close to finding out they're not in college and they kill them. Why? Because they're beta. They're so beta, they're afraid of their parents destroying their life. Even though they're over 18, they're adults and can do what they want.
And that directs them on who to contact if they want to appeal or to address what's going on?
Yes.
Okay. And Ms. Gaffney, who is that letter specifically to?
This is to Sydney.
Now, you mentioned that this letter of suspension is sent via certified mail. Is there a tracking system that Mount Union uses to ensure that that student has proper notice? Is there a signature?
There is a signature required.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that once a student is suspended, they wouldn't be allowed back into the dorms. Can you explain the process of who's allowed in the dorms and who's allowed to use Mount Union's facilities as a student?
So to live on campus, you have to be enrolled as a full-time student.
And part of that suspension, that student will lose access to all of those availabilities.
Yes.
The college campus is going to run in a professional fashion. Everything's going to be documented and signed for. That's why she's on the stand testifying to all of this. They're also bringing a point that when you're not in college, you're not allowed to live on campus anymore, which she clearly was still living there on campus because she was lying to her parents about attending college.
Gaffney, at some point, did you yourself meet Sydney Powell?
I did.
Okay. And what happened? Were you able to contact Ms. Powell?
I was. And
Okay.
Sydney came over to the office.
Okay. Can you describe that interaction?
I think when she first came in, I said, Sydney, there seems to be some confusion. It seems as though you haven't moved out of your residence hall yet, from what I can tell.
When Sydney's confronted about this, she automatically goes into what she's used to doing. She lies. She says, no, I'm still in school, and not realizing that she's talking to administration. They have signed paperwork from her acknowledging that she's been expelled. Here's a clip showing Sydney's father begging prosecution not to prosecute his daughter. If anything, I think she would need some psychological help. She stabbed your wife 23 times in the neck, on top of beating her brains in with an iron skillet. This just shows what kind of beta the father was. The mother obviously was the one wearing the pants, laying down the law. Ladies, can you imagine being murdered by your child and then your beta husband going to the courts and saying, please don't prosecute the child for stabbing you in your neck 23 times and bashing your brains in? So the administrator explains to her, no, you signed a paper acknowledging that you were suspended. You are not in school anymore.
But you're not enrolled this semester. You're not a student here this semester. And at first she replied to me that, oh, I am, but I'm still a student here. And that's when I actually addressed the fact that the suspension, I said, Sydney, you received a suspension letter that you signed for. And so we spoke a little bit further, and she said, well, yes, she had, and but she had been hoping to get things changed or fixed, and so she had been trying to work things out.
So she did acknowledge that she knew about
She did
her
acknowledge
suspension.
then that she knew she was suspended.
Administration felt like they needed to notify her parents that she wouldn't be living on campus no more, and Sydney freaked out. She was like, no, they already know, don't call them. And I think that's where this new law needs to be passed, where if a child is in college, because if they're in college, they are a child, they're still under supervision. If they're kicked out, expelled, or fell out, or don't go anymore, I think it should be a law that college notifies the parents, because the kids will murder the parents to keep them from finding out.
That something might be going on with Sydney and Mount Union? The only thing that I knew is when I tried to sign on to the, like their whatever app that they have on the website, it kept kicking me out.
Why were you trying to get into that portal?
Seeing, because the 529 plan didn't cover all the tuition for the year, so I had to make a personal check.
Okay,
So I had to see how much that was.
okay. And when you had difficulty logging onto that portal, what did you do?
I asked Sydney what was going on about it.
Okay, and what did she say?
There was a mistake with Mount Union,
Okay,
and she'd look into it.
okay, and at that point you had no reason not to trust what
Correct.
she's telling you?
Correct.
So Mr. Beta here asked his daughter what was going on. Why does this college institution not want to take my money? I don't know what profession he is or what IQ he has, but it is very low. Or it's just so beta, it overlooks anything. He goes to his daughter for an answer when the answer is clear. He should have talked to the wife before he talked to the daughter. Obviously, the wife is the one that lays down the law. She's the one that controls. That's why she is the one the daughter attacked and killed. Notice who's still alive. Mr. I go along. Tell me what to do, I go along. That's not the way to be a parent. On March 3rd, the father received a call saying that Sydney was no longer enrolled in college. So he knew she was not in school anymore. He knew.
Union called me. They called me, and the conversation was that Sydney wasn't enrolled anymore. And then I asked for how long, and they said, you have to ask her.
Okay, and I'm sure that came as a shock to you?
Yes.
And again, they said you have to ask, I know it sounds cold, but they're saying you have to ask her because they can't give you any more information, right?
That was my assumption.
The father's going to show he's not a total fucking idiot. He goes on this Live 360 app and finds out where his daughter is. She's at home when she should be in school. He's not an idiot.
What prompted you to go home, to leave work and go home?
Because I saw on the app she was home, which I thought was a little bit early. The
Okay,
360 life.
the 360 app showed that she was home.
Yes.
If someone on that app comes home, do you get like a little buzz or notification on your phone?
If it's set up, you can.
Okay, so did you just happen to see that on the 360 app, or did it give you like a
I
notification?
might have got a notification. I don't recall.
Okay, so you get a notification that Sydney's at home, correct?
Yes.
When you see that, you go home,
Correct.
right? And why did you go home?
See why she was home.
Okay. Did you have any concern for her at that time?
Just because Mount Union said she wasn't enrolled, but no, I was just going to go home and see why she was home so early. And
Okay.
He is on the stand right now in court. And to be honest, he would have to be in total shock getting a phone call from the school saying that his daughter is not enrolled when she has been lying to him this whole time. He had been giving her money. He must have been in total shock.
And did you take your phone with you when you went home?
no,
And why not?
I just left it at work so the 360 app wouldn't show me coming home.
The family was on this 360 app. He left his phone at work so Sydney would not know he was on his way home. So he's intelligent. And he's aware of his daughter lying to him. He's just used to it. But this is a great big lie. Huge. So he leaves his wife to deal with it. The lawmaker.
She was essentially still enrolled, but just having some trouble.
I don't know if she used the word trouble, but
And again, I don't want to put words in your mouth. You tell me.
she
What-
just,
What did she say?
She was, I don't remember the details, but I remember she said she was still going to some of her classes with her friend Lauren.
Do you remember telling her that, you know, you can't run away from your problems, you have to face them?
I said we'd go through, you guys get through this semester, and if you needed to take the summer off or go to, we would work through it. I remember.
Do you hear what's going on? The father is basically telling the daughter, Sydney, look, whatever problem's going on, we'll just sweep it under the rug, and if you need to take us some time off, we'll just do that, and we'll try again later. The dad was okay with it. Super beta. He knew the problem would be with the mother. The mother would be the problem. Why this dad is going along with we'll sweep it under the rug when the mother is going to be the total opposite, I don't know what's going on here. What is going on here? This 19-year-old girl, look at how pretty she is. Perfect grades in high school. And now she goes to college and she flunks out. What is going on? We don't hear about no secret love interest. We don't hear about her doing drugs. The only problem is the mother was going to find out she wasn't in college.
She said, you know, all her friends have their shit together and she doesn't. And I told her, no, that's not true.
She said she didn't. Sydney said, I don't have my shit together, but my friends do.
Yeah. She didn't know what she wanted to do, it sounded like.
Sure.
Right here, Sydney's telling her dad the truth. Her friends have all their stuff together. They're going to school, doing what they're supposed to do. And Sydney does not have her shit together. What's the father say? That's not true. That's not possibly true. You know, and here the mother's friends are going to be like, she was such a wonderful nurse. She took care of people. She made everybody smile. I mean, is that not typical overbearing parent at home? Perfect Facebook life? You got all these family pictures smiling. I mean, what serial killer, even Dahmer's neighbors were like, he was such a nice man. Gacy lived in a family neighborhood. He had house parties, barbecues. He'd give the kids candy. They couldn't believe it. Gacy was part of the Democratic Party. I mean, that's a red flag right there nowadays, isn't it?
Dean Fraser was sitting at his desk, and I was sitting next to it. He dialed. The phone was answered, and Mrs. Powell answered.
You say Mrs. Powell. Is that Brenda who answered?
Brenda answered, yes.
Okay. And what did you tell Brenda at that time?
So Dean Fraser was speaking and simply said, Brenda, this is Dean Fraser. I'm sitting here with Michelle Gaffney, our associate dean of students. We're returning your call, and that's about as far as we got. Did
Brenda respond to that introduction at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
What did she say?
I think he asked, "Is this Brenda Powell?"
Oh, okay.
And she said yes, and then he identified himself.
Okay. And Miss Gaffney, what happened next?
There was a very large or a very loud sort of thud sound, like a pounding or a thud, accompanied by a pretty loud scream, and the scream might have actually been first, and then the thud.
Okay.
As I think about it, and then there was sort of an expulsion. The other sound that I heard at that same time, or right after, was sort of an expulsion of air, like the air was knocked out of somebody.
Okay.
I'd always heard that expression of the air being knocked, having the wind knocked out of you, but I didn't. That's actually what it sounded like. And then several more repeated thuds. I don't know how to describe the sound.
No, and that's okay. And you and Mr. Fraser could hear this from the other end of the phone.
It was on speakerphone, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you hear any communication during these thuds?
Just the screaming. and this, and so we were both talking into the phone, saying, you know, what's happening? Are you okay? Do you need help? What's going on?
Yeah, can you describe your mindset at this time?
I mean, I very definitely felt like someone was being attacked.
And I'm doing this out of respect for Brenda. She would want you to hear this. The father and daughter deserve to hear it.
Now, Ms. Gaffney, did you recognize that voice on the line?
Yeah,
Okay, was that Brenda
it
Powell?
was not Brenda.
Who did you recognize that voice to be?
I was sure it was Sydney. Both Dean Fraser and I looked at each other and sort of shook our heads at each other and said, that's not Brenda.
Look at this 19-year-old girl. She was so afraid of her mother finding out she wasn't in college. She literally took an iron skillet that your grandmother bakes cornbread in and beat her brains in and stabbed her in the neck 23 times. Other sources said 30 times. For a woman to be this violent, what was wrong with her? These two parents raised this girl, and she did this.
And he then said, I don't, Sydney, I think this is you. This is not Brenda.
And what happened next?
Sydney killed her mother. The dean of the college was calling continuously. She finally answered the phone and acted like her mother. And the college administration's like, no, we can tell this is a child. This is you, Sydney.
The phone went dead.
Okay. And Ms. Gaffney, what did you do next?
We called the Akron police. By that point, I had the phone number up and the address, and so we called the Akron police and indicated.
Yeah, not to mention this happened in Akron, Ohio, where Cyraxx lives. There's been a couple of people doing tours through there lately and described it being a total slum, a shithole. The river is covered with moss and trash. They said the whole city was a ghetto. I guess so. They're raising children like this.
We felt there was some sort of situation at this house and that they needed to send someone right away.
They were on the phone, and there was a lot of screaming going on, so he couldn't really say if it was like a physical fight, but just heard like a lot of yelling and screaming going on. And then he tried calling back twice, and there was no call back.
Ms. Powell, is there anything you want to say to me at this time? All right. Thank you very much. First of all, to the victims, to the family and friends, I am terribly sorry for your loss here. I cannot imagine what you have been through. I have received and read all of the letters that have been sent to me. I have considered the evidence that was brought into evidence at the trial, the statements of counsel, and all of the information that is before me at this time. Based upon the facts and circumstances of this case and in consideration of the relevant sentencing factors, including seriousness and recidivism, and applying the minimum sanction that the court has determined will protect the public and punish the offender without imposing an unnecessary burden on state and local resources, the court imposes the following sentence. On count 1, ma'am, I sentence you to an indefinite sentence of 15 years to life in the Ohio Department of Corrections. On count 4 of the indictment, I sentence you to 3 years in the Ohio Department of Corrections. Those two sentences to be run concurrent with and not consecutive to each other. Ma'am, understand that you have a right to appeal this decision, and that notice of appeal must be filed within 30 days of the sentencing judgment entry. Your attorney has indicated to me that you are without funds to hire an attorney to represent you for appeal. Is that correct? And you wish for me to appoint counsel to represent you? Yes. All right. I will do that, and we will try and get that done before you leave the Summit County Jail. Ma'am, I will not fine you. I will not assess you court costs in this matter. Good luck to you, Ms. Powell. Thank you. We're adjourned.
You would think if you were murdered, there would be some justice to the court system. We see the Sarah Boone court case. Come to find out, she knocked old Torres out, zipped him up in a suitcase, and refused to let him out. Now people are going to go to court and testify she was crazy. She had battered woman syndrome, which wasn't the case. Jodi Arias goes to trial, claims Travis abused her, touched her butthole, made her put candy in her pussy. All he did was want to break up with her. Truly. That's all. Is this the legacy any of you want to leave behind? Whatever court case has to reveal about you? Jodi Arias said Travis was secretly gay. He liked to look at little boys. This lying bitch gets on the stand and says whatever the fuck she wants. Here's Mr. Beta himself. I was going to ask my daughter what was going on. The goddamn school administration told you what was going on. What about your dead wife? The woman you were married to? Here we are having little... Yeah, guess what? They kicked this fuck out of Scientology. Guess everybody turns you back on you in the end.